Welcome, and you are listening to another episode of the Final Countdown on Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. I am your host, Peter Kling, along with my co-host, Dr. Jaysen Rand. Doctor, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Peter. How are you guys doing?
Oh, excellent. We also have with us Ira tonight. Ira is generally our engineer. He's also going to be a guest tonight, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Mandela Effect in a few minutes. But
that got us kicked off the air the other night. You didn't tell? Did you tell everybody about that?
We're going to see if we're good for two in a row.
That was weird, guys. That was really weird. That's the second week in a row.
Well, we've never been knocked off the air to that magnitude in quite some time, at least not since I was doing my own show, Wake with Peter Kling.
It was bad enough that it literally locked up my whole computer, and I had to reboot and everything.
Was it Hillary or the Donald?
Might have been both.
No. It had to be the White House. They're the ones that were listening.
Wouldn't be surprised there.
That was probably the Vatican. Who we fooling?
Ooh, I never thought about that one.
Now, one thing, Peter, if you don't mind turning down your gain just a little bit, you're kind of coming through a little bit hot yet, so just letting you know.
Okay, how are we doing there?
There, that's a lot better.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
Ira, I told you told me he was a professional person on the radio. What's going on?
I know, it's terrible, isn't it?
Peter?
I make no qualms about it. I am a neophyte on the computer. This is an extension of the computer. It's the first time I'm actually hooked up through the switchboard, my own independent switchboard here, and so this is a whole brand new experience for me. It's like I've got my computer is growing before my eyes.
Indeed. Peter is what is known in the industry as a 12 o'clock flasher. he's one of those folks that with technology his microwave is constantly blinking 12 o'clock because he can't turn the clock on.
There you go.
Where we are now, I just ignore it most of the time because it's not so much that it blinks 12 constantly. We have enough power outages around here anymore that it just, why bother resetting?
It's not worth setting, exactly.
But yeah, it was like, okay, how do I get that? I'll just unplug it and I'll plug it back in when I need it.
Well, I'm about ready to go to war with Comcast. And I hope somebody from Comcast is listening because I've got a whole truckload of dungy that I'd like to dump. Is that allowed? Are we allowed to do that?
Absolutely. That's protest. Well, I don't know if it comes under freedom of speech. You might be breaking some environmental laws there. You know, if you're not using Monsanto's Roundup, now that would be different. You know, what could they do to you if you took Monsanto's Roundup and poured it all over the steps of your local state capitol if you had some upset problem with them, or if you used regular, horse manure?
And instead of killing everything, it grew grass and weeds and everything else right on the Capitol steps.
Yeah. One's deadly toxic, the other one's a natural ingredient. Go figure. Anyway, we were going to talk about the Mandela Effect tonight. Something that it's creating a lot of uncertainty, shall we say?
Maybe you should quickly explain that again.
Okay.
Just a quick review. How's that?
Sure. Would you like me to hit it?
Yeah, absolutely. Ira, you've got an excellent handle on this. I look at it more from, okay, how is this affecting us now, and how do we get around it, and how do we use it to make our futures happen? But you've got a lot more involvement on a personal level with this, so please go ahead.
So the Mandela Effect started off kind of getting a little bit of a prevalence a few years ago. People started noticing small changes in things, and it started off with the death of Nelson Mandela. That's where it kind of started getting, I guess, the forefront into more of the consciousness of more people. I started noticing this effect before that, but I didn't have a name for it until that point in time. It just kind of was a thing, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I'm just crazy. So the Mandela Effect was named after Nelson Mandela, who just died a few years ago in the reality that we're living in. However, there are many people, myself included, that remember him dying in prison in the 1980s or in that zone somewhere. And with his death, that's what caused the changes to happen in Africa. However, in this reality that we're living in now, He did not die in prison. He was released from prison, became president of Africa, and so on and so forth. The snowball went from there.
Did they have a double?
That's a possibility. However, with this Mandela Effect thing, what seems to be occurring is that changes in the memories of people are happening. So it's not just the fact of it's a possible double, but there are multiple changes in memory occurring where some memories are very strong with people, and they look at the reality that we live in right now and see this is completely different. How did this occur? Because I remember it something completely, differently. So how did this occur? What's going on here? And that's basically the start of the Mandela Effect. Now it snowballs from there. There are literally hundreds of different examples of people coming forward with different examples of this Mandela Effect. For instance,
if I just might add this, the odd thing is it really has nothing to do with the reality of Nelson Mandela.
Right.
Because he may have actually been somebody released from prison as Nelson Mandela. He may have actually died on June 29th, June 26th, 2013, as they said he did. They could have kept him on ice until they got to the point where they wanted to make his death official, and they held a 10-day ritual funeral,
right,
of which the timing of was most interesting, tied into both Comet Ison and an alleged off-planet deity by the name of Marduk.
Right. So,
who's also known as Anu, the king of the Anunnaki.
Now I'll give you guys another example of a Mandela Effect occurrence, at least in my own experiences, because again, I think that the personal experiences are the ones that are the most dramatic, because obviously they impact you the most. So one of the big ones for me is regarding Billy Graham. Now, Billy Graham, obviously, I think pretty much everybody out there knows who this person is. He's America's evangelist, America's preacher, state people, the president, so on and so forth. They all listen to this guy. Now,
big time preacher.
Yeah, big time preacher. Now, I remember. And my mother remembers, both of us distinctly remember in the 1990s, and specifically we believe it was 1997 zone, Billy Graham passed away. Now, I remember this because both my mother and my father absolutely adored Billy Graham. They loved the guy. They loved his preaching. They loved everything about him. And so I sat with my mother on her couch as we watched ABC TV, the funeral of Billy Graham. Now, I sat there comforting her as she's grieving and crying for this preacher that passed away. I remember after the funeral happened, like during the funeral, I remember there were even state people that were coming. There was the past presidents, there was the president at that time. They all came. There were celebrities that came. People from around the world came to this funeral, and they were broadcasting it again on ABC TV. Now, after the funeral took place, his son took over the ministry at the opposition of the board of directors of the Billy Graham Foundation because of the checkered past that he's got. The board of directors didn't want him taking over the ministry because they thought it could go.
Past?
Oh yeah. So, but he took it over anyways, regardless. Now, come to find out, in this reality that we're currently in, Billy Graham is alive and well and is 97-ish years old, 94 years old, right around in there, and he's alive and still doing preaching once in a while. Now, how is it that I have this distinct memory of him passing away, watching the funeral on TV, even down to these specifics of what happened after the funeral with the board of directors and everything, and my mother has the same memories, the exact same memories. Listen, I'll just put it to you this way. You don't forget the times that your mother cries. You don't forget the time that your mother cries, especially when it's in grief over something. That sticks in your memory, because it's such an uncommon occurrence in your life. When you have to comfort your mother as she's grieving for somebody, that's indelibly etched into a kid's mind. So how, other than either I'm crazy, I'm a liar, or reality has somehow changed, do you explain this type of thing occurring?
I got another one for you.
Okay.
I don't think you're crazy, and I don't think you're mad, and I don't think you're delusional. I just think you're paranoid, and that doesn't mean that they're not after you.
Indeed. I know I'm paranoid.
Well, seriously.
I'll second that emotion.
Oh, Peter, I left you out of that one because I already know you've been there, done that.
Yeah, it certainly is. It certainly is.
So that's kind of just the introduction to the Mandela Effect. I mean, there is just so much more that goes into this whole thing, but that's just a good place to start, basically.
Now, all right, let me ask you this. Collectively, is the whole world re-experiencing the Hillary effect, or has this thing already happened?
I don't think that really has anything to do with the Mandela Effect.
Are you sure? Are you sure?
Well, here's the thing.
I think they're being blurred.
It might be happening for somebody, but I think that's a whole different ball of wax. And when I look at what's going on there, I see a much deeper struggle because to me, Hillary represents the future control of the White House by the Vatican.
How about the governing class? If she seizes control of the governing class.
No. You see, this is coming down. This is coming down to. Well, we're going to get off topic here, but this particular pope, this Jesuit pope that we have, number one is an illegal pope. Number two, the first thing that he did publicly was strike out against the economic system, the debt system, and he made that a major campaign through his whole work right on up to the post 20.
Yeah, but that's what runs the world. The debt system runs the world.
Well, that's what they want us.
That's the business of running the world, isn't it?
No, that's not the business of running the world. That's somebody holding the world in a stranglehold.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a totally different situation. What we've been and this is essentially coming down to the Knights Templar, two riders on the same horse. You've got the Jesuits and the Zionists both controlling the banking system or the bankster system, and there's a feud going on right now, and so that end is a lot more deep.
Is that why they're buying gold and silver like crazy? All these big institutions.
Well, it's not. There. Here's a clue. There is no more gold on the U.S. stock exchange or in the London exchange. There is only paper trading. Only paper. Yes.
The actual commodity itself is not available.
The actual commodity itself is not available.
Interesting.
Only paper trading on
Ira, what's going on?
Whatever future commodity does become available.
It's pretty crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
What's going on? Do you know?
That I don't know. Actually, it's really I don't know. I've tried to pay attention to the financial issues because I do the show Money and Change with Stu Shear every Sunday, and we talk about different things that are going on financially, and it seems like every week there's just something new that the corruption's getting exposed and then covered right back up. Corruption gets exposed and covered right back up. Like almost immediately, it's outwritten from the reality.
Yeah, and now here's the interesting thing when it comes to Hillary, and as I said before, I don't. Granted, all the news is controlled, but when I watch the news, I watch the financial news, and these guys slip up a lot. They slip up a lot. And we were talking earlier, Dr. Rand and myself were talking earlier about Governor Randall. And how he backs Hillary 100%. He's like Hillary's greatest little closet clown here or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what, but Hillary could do no wrong in his eyes. Now, one of the reporters on the program pointed out how Hillary had the most negative opinion of any president, of any recent president. And the governor said, well, opinions changed. When she was senator, when she was head of state, she had a 60% approval rating. Well, that was before Benghazi.
I don't think it was ever 60%. No, I think that statistic is way off.
Now here's the situation. We know it's been reported in the news over and over again. This is stuff that they can't cover up. They've tried to. And Hillary has sat through one investigation after another, answering a lot of questions. And she said, "Oh, she goes, I'm innocent. If I wasn't innocent, they would have locked me up a long time ago." Guess what? Your day's coming. Now, now, when we look deeper, the White House has been controlled by the Vatican since Ronald Reagan. And I think what we're seeing here with what's coming up, and interesting, one of the during this conversation with Governor Randall, one of the reporters had asked him about Joe Biden becoming the Democratic nominee. And wouldn't he make a much better candidate against Donald Trump than Hillary Clinton? Nope,
I got some. I
Hillary.
got something to add to that. I got
Now,
something to add to that.
hold on, I'll let you add something to that in a second. Now, here's the thing: we know how corrupt Hillary is. And here is a governor, an ex-governor, former governor of one of the states of the United States of America, Incorporated, that is covering up, willing to cover up and overlook whatever crimes this woman may have committed, and is willing to look the other way so she can become president. That's corruption. That's collusion, and that is conspiracy. Look at exactly what it is. We know that she has been involved in these past things, and they're willing to cover everything up and look the other way. For what?
Okay.
Who's in charge of that move? Because that's exactly what that is. That's a cover up of the truth. That's conspiracy at the utmost. You got a governor. No, we're not going to look at any of her past history. We're not going to investigate any of her crimes. We want her to become president. That's a conspiracy.
Well,
That's a conspiracy against the United States of America. We the people.
Here's what I'd like to
on the
add
Constitution.
what I'd like to add to this
Sure.
particular segment is this. I've got an old high school friend from like 45, 50 years ago who's a pretty staunch Democrat. I mean, he and I remain friends regardless of our political. We're on completely opposite ends of the polar landscape of politics. But anyway, he tells me, because he's involved in California, he's like regional politics. He said that they're getting ready. They're already coaching Biden, and Elizabeth Warren will be his running mate. That'll guarantee the women vote because her and Hillary are thick as thieves. You see the strategy? It's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because she's going to get nailed. They're going to indict her.
And yeah, that's
but she can't possibly stand before an audience being indicted by the U.S. government and run for president.
I believe it was I believe Judge Napolitano said that based on what's going on, within 2 to 6 weeks they'll hand down an indictment for her.
That's my thoughts too. What I'm wondering, I guess in the future, I guess I can see this as one of the possibilities of happening is before Obama leaves office, he's going to do a blanket pardon on her. For future and past things. She's going to get cleared, and he's going to do it under the auspices of national security, because if she goes to court, if she goes to Congress, if she's indicted, blah, 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 then secret information is going to come out that needs to be held in secret for national security reasons. So we have to pardon her so that she's not in court.
Right. Well, here's what I think is also about to overtake us. This first storm, I want to jump to the other side of the ship. I want to jump now to world weather events and how it ties in. I've got some interesting thoughts to share with everybody. We are right now at the very, very beginning of the annual North Atlantic hurricane season. And even before that day arrived, several days ago, we had a pretty nasty tropical storm situation, which was barely a Category 1, strike the mid-Atlantic states. And it's still ravaging right now into New York. So my point is, I think that our prediction that the Earth disasters are going to start picking up. Remember we said around June, all the way into September. Could be wrong. We'll know next week if there's another one or two things, or a couple of earthquakes, or and we're still and let's remember there are at least 2 to 8 new volcanoes breaking surface, not only under the sea but above sea, every single month. New big ones.
Now,
They're not talking at all about them.
here's something interesting, Doctor, which we can tie right into our discussion as far as the Mandela effect, because I want Ira to explain this, and that is the supercomputer that CERN is using. It's noted that when they're now following, shucks, I forgot who put out the video, but he does a lot of them. I just saw this one yesterday or the day before, but it was on the Schumann resonance and this, what CERN is doing. And CERN, he claims that there's a direct connection to the driving up of the Schumann resonance of Earth. And what they are doing.
It's affecting time. It's affecting time.
Well, yeah, but and yeah, it's affecting time, but it's not just affecting time because of this magnetic pulse that they're actually pulsing the Earth with. That is, it's a big, huge magnetic pulse where it's not supposed to be. And so it's disrupting the planet's natural
vibratory rate.
Yeah, at which it should be 7.8 hertz per second, which is actually what a human would be. We would be in the theta state of mind, basically. Our brains would be operating at theta. And they're driving it from there all the way up into the gamma range. So it goes right through beta all the way up into gamma. And if the human brain operated at gamma, it would overheat and we would eventually pass out. You ever have something? Yeah, a lot of people will have experienced something like this, especially if they're in an accident where all of a sudden everything seems to be going slow motion.
Right, and you get very flushed and warm.
Yeah, well, your brain is operating in gamma, absorbing as much information as is humanly possible because you're going through the middle of a catastrophe.
What's interesting?
It's an overloaded circuit ready to explode.
Well, what's interesting with that effect is what actually is occurring with that is you are literally at that point in the subconscious. See, our conscious mind is actually about 6 seconds on lag. What you are doing, when you hear my voice speaking right here, actually, this actually occurred about 6 seconds ago. But your consciousness takes time to, your brain and the way that your subconscious filters everything, it takes about 6 seconds or so for it to actually become apparent to your conscious mind. But it's been going through your subconscious and the subcockles of your brain, I guess, if you want to put it that way, throughout the 6 seconds that it takes. So it's a lag delay or latency that's inherent in the way that we interact with the universe at large around us. So what's happening when you go through that period where you, like what you're speaking about there, Peter, where you're in gamma, is essentially your consciousness disconnects and you become aware of actually how that 6 second delay takes place. You're at that point, you are being fed all of that information that's coming in. You're being subjected to the way that the brain operates as it in a true way. Because the way the brain operates in a true way is it takes in information, and anything that's not important to your survival is immediately discarded as being useless information. So, when you're sitting and you're listening to the computer sounds around you and the wind blowing around you and the things kind of creaking in your house, all of these things that are going on a constant basis are coming in, but you're not aware of them because your brain thinks that it's unimportant information, and so it filters it out of your consciousness.
Well, it filters it and enters it into like what would become a computer program or
precisely
a computer file. Precisely,
yes. And so it's not aware. You're not consciously aware of it, but it's still input into the subconscious. So when you go into that car accident mode, as an example, you are actually at that point within how the subconscious works. You're there in the heart of the gum of the machine, you could say. And that's how things actually truly are.
Now, here's an interesting thing, and I know we're going to be coming up on the break here in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I do want to get into CERN's supercomputer. And there's an interesting connection here. And it has to do with the ripple of time. Earth time is only particular and peculiar to Earth. Time is a variable dimension. There was a German physicist who calculated, I think it was about 3 years ago, he calculated that what we believe is a 24-hour day has been sped up to 16 hours and change, basically. And so what we are looking at is time literally speeding up on Earth. Now, there's only one thing that can cause that: gravity.
And you think about it this way, every time there's an earthquake that occurs, we lose a little bit of time, correct?
Well, that's what they say.
Well, if they're big enough, the one that struck in '04 in Indonesia, do you remember that 9.3? It stopped the Earth for a quarter of a second.
Precisely.
A quarter, not a hundredth or not a 10/16. A quarter of a second. That is a lot in Earth dynamic structures.
Absolutely. We should be glad that the seas didn't slosh more.
Yes.
Yeah,
that was the whole point. That was what caused the huge massive tidal wave, was the lurch. It doesn't occur at the time it stops.
It occurs when it picks up again.
When it hiccups and belches back in, that's when it thrusts itself upward. And that's what caused the tidal wave. That's what causes the tidal wave.
Yeah, so when they're playing with the magnetic fields of Earth, it's going to affect us in the most negative ways. Researchers have figured out what should normally be driving Earth's Schumann resonance is the sun and lightning storms. And that is the driving factor. So beyond that, everything is artificial. Now, if the sun picks up in sunspots, what they've noticed is that there is a higher incidence of emergency room patients, both with psychological and physiological problems. More heart attacks, more strokes, more people having depressive breakdowns, all through high solar activity, which drives up the Schumann resonance. So now, if they are driving up the Schumann resonance artificially, it cannot possibly have a positive health effect on anyone. Can't.
Well, none of this was designed to be beneficial for people.
No, absolutely. But we can combat it, and there is something that we can do about it. When we come back, let's get into that supercomputer. Ira, we have a break coming up, so why don't you cue that up? And folks, stay with us. You are listening to the final countdown on the Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network.
We'll be back.
Open Eyes Network now airs a live simulcast on YouTube. Our YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/Open Eyes Network, features not just our live content, but other videos as well, and is always active. So now you can tune in many different ways. Open Eyes Network shows air Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live. Be sure to visit OpenEyesNetwork.com to find easy-to-use links to get to all of the places that you want to listen to our shows. And don't forget, all of our shows will now be archived as well on YouTube.
There is a better radio show, beyond that which is known to the people. It is a radio show more informative than others, and as timeless as infinity. It is the equilibrium between light and dark, between the sheeple and the paranormal, and it is heard at the base of man's ignorance and at the summit of his knowledge. This is the radio show of imagination, a show we call The Secret Teachings.
Set the clue to come
Hello,
back
we
in.
are back.
Yes, we are. You are listening to the final countdown here on the Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. We are glad you are with us. Wow, that was heavy. But
Whoa, guys, I think we got to stop for just a second here because that has left me a little bit rattled.
But you know,
it was excellent. It was excellent. Did you do that, Ira?
I did that, yeah.
Yeah, it really was.
Well, you're my new hero.
Now,
that was beautiful. That was beautifully done, beautifully executed. I loved your timing, the drama in between. It was just done. Who's the voice?
That was from the movie My Dinner with Andre.
Is that? Oh, that's where I've heard that before. I knew it sounded. I kept saying to myself, I know that voice. I know what he's going to say. Is that right?
Yep.
That was excellent.
I had to make use of it for sure.
Well, let me tell you something. If even a small part of that portends to be truthful at this moment in time in our experience as humanoid, living, soulfully blessed beings on this planet, then we are in big, what's the drama? Trouble.
Absolutely agree, 100%. And I do think that it's very close to the reality that we're finding ourselves in.
Oh. Well, I bet our listeners tonight weren't expecting that one to come at them. I wasn't.
However, you see these things occur. Stand up, lift yourselves erect, and know that your deliverance is getting near.
And then the machine guns come, and then it's all over, and you go, now, why did I make a dumb decision to do that?
No, not at all. Not at all. You see, here's the situation, Doctor. That little segment there that Ira put together is pretty much what we are facing, at least the sheeple of this planet are facing. Now, our audience is awake enough to understand, guess what? We can avoid this. And there are several biblical prophecies that have to do with this time and place and point right now. It's like, man, I ought to just make a whole list of them that are going on. But we are in what is called the separation of the wheat and the weeds, or the sheep and the goats. It's a separation of people who want a future and are willing to work and plan it. And those who are asleep at the switch thinking, oh, the Titanic will never sink. They told us it's unsinkable. Yeah.
Well, look. I think this is rather simple. If you listen to the Sermon on the Mount and you read Matthew, the Lord himself said, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm not trying to quote from the good book, the Father is going to send him back to reap in the flock. Now, what do you think that means? It says that he will appear in the clouds, and all will see him, and that there will be an assemblance of his flock, his children, his Christian believers, his faithful, his saints, will all be gathered. They will be protected, and then the celestial army comes. Now, if you jump back to the book of Revelation, what's that?
I said, if you follow what it says, this is toward the end of the last day prophecy.
But the point is, where are we in that? That's what I'm asking you. You're the biblical guy.
Well,
where exactly are we? Because I've been tracking the book of Revelation. I covered it in my book and all that stuff. We talked about it.
We are just over 3 years through the first half of the 7 years of tribulation.
Okay, so we've already begun the process.
Yes. The process started with this Pope. It's just
okay.
It's just amazing how all this came together. And I don't mind saying it was October of 2010 that I said we had to watch the date 3/13/13. And that was the day, the exact day that they made a Jesuit a pope. And that goes totally against Vatican law.
Stop. Stop. Here's the point. Peter, you're right on, but I have to ask a point, or make a point, and ask a question. Since God controls, knows all, has created all, and is directing all, then obviously there must be some celestial plan on the part of Christ and his armies through this Pope to bring these things about.
Well,
somebody's in control of the Pope. So who is it? Is it the good side or is it the bad side? The good side being the Lord. Is he really?
Answered that question himself, Dr. Rand. The Pope has sided with Lucifer. He has sided with Satan. When the Vatican signed their part of the treaty that was held during the Mandela death ritual, when the Vatican stood up and signed the treaty with Marduk, they made it clear which way they were going to go. Reportedly, the only country that did not sign that agreement was Israel. They're Zionist Molech worshippers. Why would they give up Molech for Marduk? So
you better explain that one. You better explain that one. I think that almost went over my head.
It's the Molech is actually the first Molech was the Egyptian god Set, but Molech became Molech is a title, or it means terrible god, and it is associated mostly with Baal, who required live child sacrifice. And the Canaanites were the child sacrifice experts of their day, and that's why Israel was told to wipe them out of the promised land and off the face of the earth. It's also
and they didn't do it.
They did not carry out their mission, and because
they failed. And there's the start of the problem. There you go. It has nothing to do with Cain and Abel, and it has nothing to do necessarily with Isaac getting rid of the hybrid child. No, that wasn't the beginning at all. It was right here.
Well, yeah, you see, it's right at that point that if you can change that point in history, guess what happens?
Yeah.
But what they're trying to do, and what I believe they're trying to do with CERN, is to change
the harmonic balance.
Well, hold on. If they can get back and they can change the right thing,
it'll even things back out and restore balance.
No. It'll go just the opposite way, because if they go back and they can change the outcome of the Abrahamic covenant. And now let me explain this. The Abrahamic covenant goes to his son by Sarah, his son Isaac, and then from there Jacob, and down the line all the way to David, and then it can be tracked right to Jesus himself. So you've got the connection to the Lamb of God and the Lion of Judah within the Christ, and we'll talk about that and that change in a second from Isaiah 11:6. So here's the thing: but Isaac was not Abraham's first son. Abraham's first son was Ishmael, who fathered the Arabic nations.
Right.
And so now, if they could change the birthright to go from Isaac to Ishmael, the true firstborn, even though he was born to a slave woman whom he dismissed, that would shift the whole paradigm. But you see, they're trying to change things that have already happened and have been satisfied in cosmic history. And so now all they can try to do is change the reality of our world now. But once it's been written in the cosmos, it can't be changed.
Right.
It's what they're trying to do here within the third dimension, using the dimension of time to go back in Earth history to make changes. But what we see happening in the cosmos is actually basically a cosmic wave. It's not so much we think of God and try to personalize him. Well, he's going to do this or he's going to do that. We're talking about the intelligent power of the cosmos itself, all of the dimensions. And there's an energy wave which is going through it, and it's that energy wave as we're told to pray, let your will be done as it is in heaven. Well, those other 7 dimensions have that energy wave going through them. They are now hitting the physical dimensions. So it's an energy change, and it will take us back to the alpha state of mind, where love exists, where we plan our futures, where the hate stops, where we start caring about each other, where
Well, the
we...
world could sure use a little of that right now, couldn't it?
Yes, yes. And you see, those who cannot make that conscious shift, right now, we have to make the conscious shift, because this is the only thing we have. We are our own futures. If we don't start creating our future now, we may not have much of a future to create. And
yeah, you're responsible for your reality. You see, I wrote a book. I haven't published it, but it's completely written. It's called The Cosmic Blueprint for After. I had the privilege of becoming co-author of a treatise, an extraterrestrial treatise on the nature of human cosmic reality. It's a treatise on the reality, as we would understand it as humans, of our universal consciousness and its relationship to our physical reality. And
now I'd like Ira to comment.
It took 11 years total from the moment I got the raw manuscript. See, what they did is they delivered me. I was part of this program from that. Remember that childhood time I told you guys about, when I used to go zipping through my walls, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to age 8, onto these classroom on the ship, and I had this co-mate, like my Australian co-mate. Hey, mate. His name is Ilan. Anyway, that's the thing that's still going on. And it took about 11 years for him. Well, first of all, he got me the raw manuscript. That's a story in itself. And it was written in huge paragraphs. Sometimes the paragraphs were a page long. And first of all, I had to divide everything into paragraphs. And then I had to create sentences. And it had very little punctuation, because what it was an extraterrestrial treatise dictated to a woman who was in a mental trance state for 3 days and 3 nights. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep. She never left her chair. It's like her bodily functions were frozen, and she was totally healthy, and she hand-typed on an old typewriter. An old finger typewriter, not a computer. The keys were... Took her 3 days. And that was the manuscript that mysteriously wound up in my hands 4 years after she and the husband disappeared. The story was that she had been acting very strange, and her and her husband had been living together for they were married for 45 years, and they took in their nephew, whose parents had been killed in an auto accident. So they had this nephew living with them, a nice kid. He was 22 years old and just getting ready to go to the community college in South Miami, Florida, which is where I got the manuscript. But all his trek and how he got there and how he got the manuscript, that's another show. I got to tell you this story sometime. Anyway, I get this manuscript from this professor who teaches at the community college where this kid was destined to go. And how I got the manuscript was I was in the recording business then. And I was recording a Christian album on a young man called Brandon. Well, later it was Aaron. It was Aaron Day. His name was going to be Brandon Day. We said Brandon was to Brandon. It was Aaron Day. And his girlfriend was taking classes, and I had talked to them. I had him over to I had a nice condominium, a 2-story condo on a lake in South Miami, and I had them over for dinner. And they saw some of my UFO stuff and my pictures and gold records and all that. And we got to talking about UFOs, and I told them about my background and my story. Of course, Aaron knew part of it. because he had been out to, by the way, guys, he was out to the Integratron with me, and we had a series of extraterrestrial contacts, which I'll have to tell you about. We also met Quetzalcoatl out on the desert, about 200 yards due west of Goat Mountain, where I told you about the portals. Remember the day we talked about the portals going up?
I remember
your
that.
Friend? Okay, now, where am I going with all this? Simply to be talking to you today about a book which probably, I suppose I should prepare for publication, because when the shift comes, this is what Peter talks about, the paradigm shift. When that shift comes, there will be a huge jump in the intelligence levels of the people with clear hearts, clear spirits. Those are the gifts of the Holy Spirit. I'm not trying to go religious, and I'm not preaching. I'm just telling you what Elon tells me is in the game plan for the good guys. You see, there are good guys out there, guys, and there are bad guys out there. There's evil out there, and there's good out there. There's light, and there's darkness. There's heat, and there's cold. Nothing is different about the reality of extraterrestrial or ultra-terrestrial life that isn't the same here in simple human form and human life. The low vibration that we're at. By the way, we are very, very low on the totem pole of extraterrestrial fans. Do you understand what I just said?
Yeah, well, here's an interesting.
They think we are extremely dangerous species.
Well, yeah, we've gotten that way because of the duality, and that's one of those.
You can go almost anywhere today and get yourself killed in the world. You know that, don't you?
Oh, absolutely.
Think of what I just said. You can go almost anywhere and get yourself killed in the world today. It's
absolutely.
becoming that
raucous. Is to go to a place that you won't get yourself killed. So we are now. Here's the thing. We are at a stage where this Mandela effect is changing the reality of of what we see before our eyes, and how far they're trying to change this will be quite interesting in what we see. And there's a way that we can take control of it, and that's where we got knocked off the air last time. But before we get to that, Ira, we started down this path about 3 times so far. CERN and Google both have a supercomputer.
They do, yes. So,
and I have to believe that they are utilizing crystal technology, which essentially makes the most advanced silicone chip that we use in our computers today. It puts it somewhere between a vacuum bulb and a smoke signal.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll tell you what has been found with this particular computer. It's called the D-Wave computer, D-Wave. The D-Wave computer is so powerful that the calculations that have been able to be done on it so far, and this is only like the first sets of calculations that of its processing power, is that it is at least 100 million times faster at computing than the fastest linear normal computer that we currently have. 100 million times faster. It is capable of computing within 5 seconds, something that it has been estimated would take 10,000 years for a regular computer to be able to calculate.
Watch out. Big Brother's watching.
That is a scary, scary computer, I'm telling you guys. Okay, so now, let me give you guys the info as far as D-Wave is concerned. Now, Google, they have this computing system. Again, it's called D-Wave, D-Wave. You guys can look it up on the internet if you want to. There's a lot of info that's out there about it. They've actually had it now since about 2013. It's been around and in development since the early 2000s. So that should tell you guys something there as well. Now, if you guys know anything about how military tech works, at the minimum, they are 50 years ahead of us, Now, D-Wave computer, it is a quantum computer. It is a true quantum computer, and it is capable of calculating 4 different ways, and that's why it is so fast. So a normal computer system, it can only calculate with ones and zeros. So one, power switch being on, power switch being off. Power switch on, it's 1. Power switch off, it's 0. And it does this in a very linear way, one after the other after the other. And granted, it does it very fast. They can do, our normal computer systems can do millions of calculations per second with no problem. But it's still 1 and 0 linear calculations that are being done, no matter how many computer chips you throw at it, no matter how many computer chips you have on this one particular CPU on the inside of your computer, it's still a very linear thing. The D-Wave computer is capable of calculating at 4 different processes in 4 different ways conjunctively. So it can calculate in 1, it can calculate in 0, just like the regular computers can, but it can also calculate in 1 and 0 at the same time, and neither at the same time. So 4 different methodologies of computing or figuring, calculating that this thing can do. And it can also do these things not only linearly forward, like our normal computers can, but it can also do them backwards as well. It can also do them up and down. So it can do simultaneous calculations. So it is capable of essentially, you could throw a program or a problem at it, and it is capable of calculating 4 different pathways at the same moment in time, at the minimum.
As choices to tackle the problem, or just as independent ideas?
Independent ideas.
Okay.
Now, what it is best at doing is optimizing. So it is the best at making sure that things are optimized and running smoothly. Okay. So it can do changes in its calculations forwards and backwards, up and down, to optimize whatever it is that's going on. Now, this thing also has, in storage space available to it, the number of bytes greater than the number of subatomic particles within the known universe. Now, that is absolutely vast. Okay, and as Peter said, that alludes very much into crystal kind of technology, or crystal storage kind of computing technology, which they definitely have been working on for a number of decades, by the way, for those that aren't aware. So he's absolutely correct with that. Now, one of the other things that I guess you could put in as a sideline with this is that there's one other place that has this computing system as well, and both are tied together. Now, that other place happens to be CERN.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
I just want to stick this in. Think about the capabilities of this computer. And CERN is concerned about getting down to the God particle and analyzing it and how to best utilize that energy.
Yeah.
And with a computer like this, they can utilize energy like that to go forward and backward into time and do things that can affect our present.
And
how we perceive our present.
What I'm positing with this, and I may be completely off base with this, but I definitely could see this occurring, okay, is because of the way that they've done the storage system. I think that what they've done is they have actually quantumly entangled all of the subatomic particles of the known universe to these quantum computers, and they're using it as a storage medium because that's completely possible to do. Okay, it is totally possible to do something along those lines. And with that in mind, if they wanted to tweak what happens with those subatomic particles, they could. They absolutely could. So maybe, and this is just speculation on my part, guys, okay, take it as that. But maybe what we're seeing happening is that through whatever methodologies they're using to entangle these things together, maybe they are having this quantum computer tweak things in the past as a beta test to see if they can implement changes in the timelines or in the reality that we find ourselves in. Timelines is kind of a bad corollary because I don't think time exists the way that we believe that it exists. I think that it's a little bit different, but that's a whole nother show in and of itself. But as far as reality is concerned, they're kind of tweaking the realities. Now, somebody asked me, Peter, I might have been you, asked me, why are we seeing just these small things as being changes? Was it you that was asking me about that?
No,
I think it was somebody else that was, but
I mentioned something like that to you. The question was, when this does occur, is it just to some of us, or are all of us?
Okay, well, I'll get into that one here in just a second then. But somebody had asked me the other day about why it seems like only small things are changing. So as an example, one of the examples of a Mandela Effect occurrence is in the movie Snow White. Instead of the witch saying to the mirror, mirror, mirror on the wall, in this reality, it's now been changed to magic mirror on the wall, who is the fairest of them all. Another example is the Berenstain and Berenstein Bears issue. So the Berenstein Bears is how I always knew it. It was spelled Stein, yet in this reality, it's Stain. So Stain instead of Stein. These minor changes, I think, are occurring because you're starting to see like reality fray a little bit. So here's an example. When you have a piece of clothing that is starting to get frayed, it frays on the outside of it first, and it's just little small fuzzies that appear first, right? But eventually those little small fuzzies grow to become one big string that starts to unravel, and boom, reality becomes completely unwound. Okay, now I think that's what we're seeing happening. I think that those people that are out there that maybe have encounters with the other side in some way have had some kind of thing has occurred that the consciousness has been tweaked to notice things that are outside of the norm in some way. So encounters with the other side, near-death experiences, people that have been, encountering aliens or UFOs, things along those lines have tweaked the person's consciousness to notice things that are unusual. So I think that those people are the ones that are going to notice the Mandela Effect first, because they're noticing that something is outside of the norm here. Hey, wait, my memory is different here. What the heck's going on? You see what I mean?
Yeah, let's address that a little bit deeper. We do have to stop for a break here, though. Folks, stay with us. This is going to be deeper. Now, how does this affect us personally, and how can we combat it? We'll find out when we come back. Stay with us. You're listening to The Final Countdown on Late Night Midlands Radio Network.
Open Eyes seeks out the heart of matters, looking for explanations in places that most other radio hosts refuse to go. No subject is forbidden, and nothing remains hidden. Listen to Open Eyes on the Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network, weekdays from 7 to 9 p.m. Open minds, open hearts, open eyes.
The L&M Radio Network and Late Night in the Midlands depends on you, the listener. Without you, there would be no us. So help us continue to bring you the best guests with the best information, and subscribe today. Information on becoming an L&M subscriber can be found at the top of LateNightInTheMidlands.com. Just click the About Subscriptions tab and become part of the family while helping the truth stay alive. And while you're at it, maybe subscriptions aren't for you. A one-time donation helps as well. Click that donate button on the right side of LateNightInTheMidlands.com and help us help you.
Have you ever heard of Audible? Audible is a website with hundreds of thousands of audiobooks. They're all high quality, easy to listen to, and, best of all, if you take advantage of a special deal that we've worked out for you, you can get one for free. That's right, a free audiobook of your choice in any genre, simply by going to audibletrial.com/openeyes and signing up for the free trial. It's simple to do, and it would support the shows that we bring to you, and hey, you get a free book out of the whole thing. So why not take advantage of it today? Go to audibletrial.com/openeyes and sign up for the trial.
Our system became beautiful, with each machine working in perfect harmony. We were one people. Victory was ours. Our genesis had begun.
We believe in the truth of the following statements. All people are created equal, and they are created with certain rights no one should ever take, including life, liberty, and trying to do what makes them happy. To make sure people have these rights, we create government that gets its power from the people being governed. And if any form of government starts destroying these rights, it's also their right to alter it or do away with it, and then to install new government, which they feel is the most likely to give them safety and happiness. We're not saying that governments that have been in existence for some time should be changed or tossed aside lightly on a whim. In fact, experience shows us that people are more likely to suffer under evil government as long as they can stand it, rather than to stand up and do something. But when they're abused for a long time, and the things that belong to them are increasingly taken away for the same reasons, and benefiting the same tightly knit group of people who rule with absolute political power, then it's the people's right and their duty to throw off that kind of government and to find new guardians of their future.
Amen. Amen, brother. Those sound like Trumpites to me, don't you think so?
I'm not sure about that, Doctor, but we certainly are back. Thanks for staying with us. This is the final countdown on the Late Night in the Midlands Radio Network. Folks, we are listener supported, so please do ask you to support us in what we are doing. Hit the donate button, and even $1 helps. It may not go a long way in the world, but it goes a long way in what we can do with it. So if you can, please do. You know, when I look at this whole situation with these advanced computers and where they want to go with the 2045 initiative, we are really looking at the extermination of biological humans as we know it. And we look at the fact that now we can understand how they will turn around and reprogram a nanobot with our personalities and our likes.
Aha, Peter.
Dislikes.
Peter, now you're talking about something that I was going to get into as far as this whole quantum D-wave computer thing is concerned. What I think actually is going on, and this is a theory that I've been developing for a little while, so again, I could be way off base with things, but I think that it's entirely possible that they have created nanobots that are basically akin, or each one is tweaked towards being one of the subatomic particles, and that through this quantum computer, being in control of these nanobots, they can literally recreate the world within a second. I mean, within literally a second, these things can move at the speed of light. These things are super, super fast, okay? They could recreate all of the solar system within just a matter of seconds, let alone the planet itself within a second. Literally a blink of an eye. A twinkling of an eye, things can change.
Now, I want you to think about this as far as what the satanic rebellion is all about. You see, it's a rebellion against essentially, the genetic engineers are rebelling. And saying, okay, well, we'll erase organic life form and replace it with a different variety of life form, an inorganic life form.
Now, Peter, I got one other question for you. Since you're a Bible guy, there's another Mandela effect that I'm suspecting, and I'd like to get your thoughts on this. You're a Bible guy. So you've talked about the lion and the lamb. I've talked about the lion and the lamb. That one's kind of now in the consciousness of those of us that have been experiencing the Mandela effect. And for those that aren't aware, Isaiah 11:6 was changed. The lion and the lamb is no longer there. Now it's the wolf is dwelling with the lamb, and completely changes the whole meaning of the prophecy involved in Isaiah.
Yeah,
Now,
and the interesting thing is, I just want to comment real quick on this. When I first became aware of that was I was with a group of a large number, well over 100 biblical scholars at a meeting, and that scripture was actually read.
Yeah.
And now mostly everybody had a similar Bible. You know what everybody had? Mostly everybody had tablets. I was like, seriously, you guys have moved into the computer age on this? but I'm following along in the Bible that I've had, the research Bible that I've used for years, and I'm following along, and it says, wait a minute, where's the scripture that says the lion and the lamb? Why does this say wolf, and where'd the leopard come from?
Right, exactly. So now,
and it's interesting because I'm looking around at everybody who's like, you know, am I just forgetting something? Because nobody else is finding this odd. Mm-hmm. But yet I'm looking around and wondering, where did this wolf come from, and what happened to the lion? Now, you know, I didn't bring it up because it would sit right there. I was, you know, and I wasn't aware of the Mandela effect at work as I am now. So, but that's when I was first like, hey, something's wrong here. And then I went, I've got a complete biblical library. And so I put in a search lion and lamb, and there aren't any scriptures where the lion and the lamb are together. Now, interesting, when I plug in wolf into the search engine, every scripture that has to deal with the wolf and lamb, interesting, just wolf, but it'll bring up the wolf and the lamb, a lamb among wolves, a wolf among sheep, a wolf entering the flock. The little flock will become like lost sheep among wolves. There is never any positive outcome between the lamb and the wolf. Mm-hmm. However,
because there was never anything positive about the wolf during that period of time in that place.
Yes.
Right.
Now the fact that you say, oh, well, what about the lion? Lion will make short work of lamb. Yes, indeed.
But the lion was also symbolic of royalty and power.
Specifically to the house of Judah.
Exactly. The king of Judah was always referred to as the Lion of Judah.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so you had the Lamb of God, which was the sacrificial lamb of Passover.
The scapegoat, exactly.
Well, okay, yeah.
AKA Jesus Christ, the coming Messiah.
Yes, exactly. You have that combination, which has now been undone within Scripture.
Exactly.
And so when you go all the way to the end in Revelation 22, where there's actually a curse about this, if anything gets changed within the Scriptures, there'll be a meting out of punishment.
It was about the book of Revelation. That was a specific reference to the book. If anyone changes a word of this book.
Well, wait for Revelation to start to change too.
Yes, indeed. I think that's next. Now, okay, let me get this. Let me get this and see what you think about this, Peter. Okay, I have a verse from the King James Bible. Okay, it is Luke. So Sorry, my eyesight is terrible, so you guys knew I'm blind. Luke 17, verse 31. Thank you, dear. My wife was reading that for me. The King James Bible, it says this. Now, I want you to pay attention really close to the words, okay? It says, "In that day, he which shall dwell upon the housetop and his stuff in the house, let no one come down to take it away." Now, his stuff, I always remember that verse talking about his goods. I never remember anywhere in the King James Bible, or any Bible for that matter, the word stuff being used anywhere. And yet now the word stuff is found at least 20 times within the King James Bible.
Now, this raises an interesting point, because the same point could be made for, in the King James Version, the wine skins have changed to wine bottles.
Exactly. They didn't have wine bottles during that time period.
But here's the question. Why those 2 points? Why only in the King James Version?
That's what my point is too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm looking, I'm online right now, and I'm at.
Well, who was responsible for that?
King James. Now, here's the thing.
We're getting down to the villain, are we?
Yeah, and here's the thing about the King James Bible. King James had.
So that's where these changes occurred.
Hold on. No.
No, it's changed on all of them.
It's changed. Every quote from Isaiah 11:6, where it says the lion shall lay with the lamb, has been changed. If I just said, and the lion shall lay with the lamb, and posted a picture of a lion and a lamb, that wouldn't change. But where the quote, you can go look at Google Images on this. If you type in Isaiah 11:26 and go to images, you're going to see a picture of a lion, several pictures of lions laying with lambs. There's a couple of a wolf, interestingly enough, laying with the lamb. So somebody is helping this paradigm along. Anyway,
and it very well may be the artificial intelligence in charge of D-Wave that's doing that, by the way.
Yeah, but now I'm just online here, okay? And what I'm reading in Luke 17:31, it says, "On that day, let the person who is on the housetop, whose belongings are in the house, not come down to pick these up. Likewise, the person out in the field must not return to the things behind."
Right. Belongings and goods were the words that were used.
Yeah. So it wasn't changed to stuff. What's stuff? You know, if you said that to 100 years ago, people would think that you were putting something into a bag, stuffing something. It wouldn't refer to your things, your belongings.
In fact, when the King James Bible, let me get this one for you guys here. 1611 is when the King James Bible was translated into English. The King James Bible, 1611, the word stuff was actually very, very, very rarely used. In fact, it was barely even a word at that point in time in the English language. Keep in mind,
that's a very modern word.
Yes, keep in mind that when Shakespeare, for instance, wrote his works, there were only 300,000 words in the English language, and yet now, there were only about 120,000 words in the English language, and yet now we have added another 300,000 into the English language since that period of time.
We got a lot more stuff now.
We got a lot more stuff, exactly.
Watch it. That could turn not so nice.
Now, here's the interesting thing about the King James Bible, though. The King James had the name Yahweh or Jehovah removed over 7,000 times from the Bible because King James was a Freemason, and he was introducing the Bible as a Freemason Bible, and they replaced the name Yahweh or Jehovah with Lord God or Lord God.
Right.
Over 7,000 places.
Which I've always had an issue with, Peter, because when you see that word Lord or God that's written there, who are you talking about? It could refer to anything or anybody.
Yes, and you see, the idea was so that they could insert the Freemason god of Jabulon in there as their Lord God. The only requirement of being a Freemason, other than you have to be a male,
is you have to have a belief system.
God.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what God it is. Yep. They're going to tell you when you get to the 33rd degree. They'll tell you which god you're going to worship when you get to that level. It's just that simple. Now, whether you want to go on with that or not, that's your business. But that's the reason why the name was removed. So now we see more anomalies happening with the King James Version. Why? Why does the Bible, why do the two Bibles that I have still say wineskins and it's wine bottles in the King James Version?
Right. And one other thing that's interesting, too, to note about the King James issue is King James also wrote one other book as well, or was responsible for the writing of one other book as well, and that was the Book of Demons.
Oh, really?
Nice. So, let's take it from the source. So here's the thing. We're seeing changes in what is supposed to be the guide, the rule. And it's like, wait a minute. This is where faith is going to have to overcome what we are reading in Scripture, because we can no longer fully trust all the Scriptures. The only way to do that is to go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls and see if there are any changes taking place there. Isaiah 11:6 would be a good example. That's part of the Dead Sea Scrolls. If it changed in the Dead Sea Scrolls, what happened?
That couldn't possibly be.
Yeah, right.
What I'm thinking.
There's impossibilities.
Well, I'll tell you one of the other kind of alternative thoughts that I've had with regards to this Mandela effect and why it could be occurring, or why some of us are specifically remembering these things and others are not, is one possibility. Now, one other Mandela effect is the placement of us in the galaxy. Now, when I was growing up and in my memory of things, I was very fascinated by all things space. I'm a big sci-fi geek. I love science fiction. I love anything science fiction, up to and including the point that I write science fiction books. Okay, so I love science fiction. Now, one of the things that I've always known in my memory of things is that our placement in the galaxy was very specific. It was the outer Sagittarius arm of the galaxy. On the Sagittarius arm, okay? Mm-hmm. And yet, in this reality that we're in, we're actually more closely centered towards the center of the galaxy, about 25,000 light years away from where we originally started out, by the way. And we're part of the Orion Spur now. Mm-hmm. So, literally, we have gone from one world to another. And I think that's part and parcel of all of this that we need to bear in mind. Perhaps those of us that do remember these Mandela Effect changes, perhaps we actually did come from that original Earth, the old Earth, and we have been somehow transferred to this one that is a close approximation. Maybe it was even terraformed to look very close to Earth. Or maybe there has been a alternative reality situation going on with this one, that it's very closely associated. But those of us that remember these Mandela Effect things come from a different world with a different history. And those that are here,
are they coexisting?
They're closely related. They're parallel to each other.
They're coexisting.
Yes.
Yeah, hold on a second here.
Okay.
Yeah. Now this is interesting. Okay, because let's use the premise here that their goal is to transform their chosen human folk, who all have underground tickets to get through the whatever we're going to be facing here as far as the Nibiru event. So all those people get a free ride. However, they can't make the jump as human. They can make the jump as nanobot.
Right.
So now the biological claim on the human race becomes a moot point.
Correct, because it's at that point artificial beings.
Yes. So essentially what has happened is the biological creators of life within the third dimension are now using artificial intelligence to create artificial life.
Correct. That is one possibility. One of the things that I'd like to add into this then as well is that those that don't remember anything like what we do, those that are experiencing no Mandela effects, they are the ones that are originally from here. So their memories are intact. When they say, no, it has always said the wolf shall dwell with the lamb, they're correct for their reality, but not from the one that we came from. So they're correct, but they're also wrong in perspective of what we're saying here.
They're correct in what they believe.
In what they've had.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here again, a separation: the sheep and the goats, the wheat and the weeds. A separation of. Now it's going to be interesting to see how this works out, because those of us who are, quote, if you want to call it that, wheat class, and in the parable, what happens with the field of wheat and weeds? They wait until the final day, until the harvest. And then they go in and they collect all the wheat and they collect all the weeds and they incinerate the weeds along with the weed seed so it doesn't infect the field anymore.
Right, the wheat and the chaff, yep.
Yes. And so then they bring the wheat into harvest. Now, if we are going through a similar parable, those of us who are, the reality of the parable, let's put it that way, those of us who are aware of the changes are
We are the wheat.
Yeah, how about that? All of a sudden, you have a distinct class of people who are saying, wait a minute, why are these realities changing?
Yeah.
And so who's the reality changing for?
Remember, there's a couple of things that are regarding the end times. One of the things that's said is that there will be a great deception to come upon all the people that could deceive even the very elect, if possible.
Yeah. So now here's the thing. If we are aware of this anomaly, we're going to call it an anomaly, then what we are facing pretty much is the end of biological humans as we know it. As I've said for years. No, that's what we're facing. But as I've said for years, the race is over. The human race is over. We're about to see the birth of the human family.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
You see, and so now we can go back and we can tie in the very first prophecy within the scriptures to this, which talks about the serpent seed and the woman seed. Now, the woman was not Eve. A lot of people believe that the woman was Eve. It wasn't Eve. It was God's woman. And it was that seed that comes down, who is the Christ, or the Messiah, who is the Lion of Judah, the Lamb of God. It's up to that seed to crush the head of the serpent seed, to put it out of business. And so that's what we're waiting for. Now, the crushing of the end of the serpent seed would include all of the weeds who's can't take any note that their world is literally changing before them.
Right. And one thing that I want to add into that little parable, Peter, if you don't mind, is a thought that most people don't think about with that parable. Let me posit this to you and see what you think of it, okay? In those times, in those ancient days, 2,000-3,000 years ago, whenever they would do the wheat separation, so what they would do to do it, they would grab sheaves of wheat and they would beat the wheat until the chaff would come from it, and they could separate the two apart using the beater sticks basically to cause the chaff to drift away from the true wheat. And then they would go through and they would pick out the wheat and bring it away. Now, what they would do then is they would allow people that were poor to come in and take anything that they could find from the chaff that would be usable. So the people would come in and they would gather together some parts of the chaff, but they would also gather together parts of like broken wheat and that kind of thing that would be considered to be unusable for the more richer purposes, I guess you could say.
I think they were considered scavengers. They were looked down upon.
They were not. No, they were not looked down upon. It was actually part of the culture. They were actually totally validated. In those times, there was a big attitude towards the poor. They had to take care of the poor. It was God's command commandment.
You are not allowed to harvest along the borders of your property.
That was the reserved for the poor.
And any sheaves of wheat left in the field, you are not allowed to go back and gather.
That was left for the poor. So they were not looked down upon. They were actually encouraged to make
They had
use
to
of
get
it.
out and work in order to gather the wheat.
Right.
It was left for them.
Good.
And
They still had to work for it.
Gather.
They still had to work for it, exactly. So, but I think that's an important part of that parable that is left out from most people's minds, is the fact that in that culture during that time period, there was this idea of there are going to be those that are coming in to gather what's left over from the chaff. Now, that being said, who is it then in the parable that's gathering that chaff that's being separated from the elite and the non-elite? You see what I mean? Or the elect and non-elect?
Well, you see, here's the thing. When Jesus talked about his coming kingdom, did he go to the Pharisees and Sadducees and the religious leaders and explain to them? No, he went to the people who would be going out and gathering that wheat that was left behind. He went to the poor, the broken down ones, the ones that weren't being cared for spiritually or physically.
Exactly.
So here's the thing. There are us that know well what is going on. That's why we're on the radio. That's why we talk about these things. And we dissect them and pull them apart and see what is causing this and what we can do to combat it. And this is where we need to start to really comprehend the operating speeds of our brain. And it's where we need to get out of the duality of the fight and flight, the fear syndrome. You can't create your future in beta, but we can create our future in alpha. That's where we were meant to be. And so when and it's also how we can combat them manipulating the Schumann resonance of Earth. I'll give you a great example. I believe it was Hurricane Ivan, which was a HAARP-controlled hurricane that drove right over the top of us. We were without electricity for 8 days, but I watched it right up till our electricity went out. You could just see the HAARP pulses just drawing that hurricane right along. And the day after the hurricane, I remember it's like yesterday, it was a beautiful morning. The temperature was like perfect for what I like. And I was sitting outside the house. There wasn't a sound. It was nice and totally quiet. The birds were chirping. And I was just pissed. I was really pissed about everything. And I was thinking, why am I so pissed? I thought, well, hell, I've just been harped for the last 36 hours. That might have something to do with it. My attitude changed. Instantly changed. Just like that, once I realized
that's the thing is that recognition. You see, that's where the power comes in, is knowing. It takes you from that belief into knowing, and it changes the energy of what you are dealing with. No longer, it's like okay, in the Mandela Effect examples that I give, if you can look at yourself and see that in your memory things are different, you can either accept it or you can reject it. If you reject it, what ends up happening is the memory, you're literally changing your memory. You're changing it to conform to whatever it is that's going on in the world, this reality right now. You're going to go forward and just say, okay, well, I must be misremembering things, and it was actually magic mirror on the wall, not mirror on the wall. However, if you take hold of that mirror on the wall memory and say, no, I know I'm right, that changes the attitude, that changes the energy in relation to this whole effect. And suddenly you can start seeing a whole lot more of these things opening up before you, instead of the door being closed and you no longer being aware that these changes are occurring.
Yeah, what we
of magic
is like the sinking of this cosmic ship, so to speak. And it's time for us to really start creating our realities. That's one of the reasons I've looked at the biblical prophecies, and trust me, folks, I am not religious. You have never heard me say, prepare for the rapture. You're all going to burn in hell if you don't. I've never once ever said anything that was attached to any sort of religious dogma. I use science in order to base what I say. And I don't just say, oh, well, science says this, so we got to say this. I suss it out. I've been doing this my whole life. And here's the other side. I've been seeing future events and living through them since the age of 9. I'm 60 years old. I could have told you who was going to be president in every single election. I'm a little bit confused on this one because I don't see Obama as totally relinquishing his power. However, there are so many different factions at work here. Anything is possible because
all he needs to do is find a national emergency or a global emergency strong enough to declare martial law before the election, and it simply is stalled. You don't cancel it; you just put it off.
Well, here's the thing.
There you go. That's how it starts.
Yes. What we are facing right now is financial collapse. That's what the big issue is. It's not Nibiru. It's not a zombie apocalypse. It's financial collapse.
Oh, but it'll be all of those too.
Yeah, because financial collapse will bring out the worst in everyone, and there will be riots in the street. We've seen it in Greece. We've seen it in Spain. We've seen it in Italy. We've seen it in Portugal. We've seen it in Cyprus.
Venezuela.
Look at Venezuela right now. People are. I posted a picture. Interesting. I posted a picture of one grocery store where people were just standing in line to get in, and another picture along with it with armed police force or armed military inside the grocery store, and there was food on the shelves.
They literally had 6 hours worth of wait times to get into the grocery store.
I had somebody say that the second picture is false. I live in Venezuela. There is no food.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. That's what they said. I live in Venezuela. There is no food.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
And go look at what's happening there. Any kind of food truck, they're raiding it. Once they find that there's food in it, they overturn the truck, a tractor trailer.
I wonder if Uncle Bernie knows about what's going on in Venezuela.
He was asked about it, and he refused to answer anything about Venezuela.
Oh, I wonder why.
Maybe because socialism didn't work.
I want to add in here. I want to add in here, guys.
That's not a kind thing to say. That is not a nice thing to say, Peter.
Well, I want to add in.
I'm known for the truth, not for niceties.
let me add into this here, guys, real quick. As far as all this goes, what we're seeing is actually a part of the Mandela Effect, and it sounds weird for me to say so, but I can tell you why. Again, like I said, you start noticing reality fraying on the edges. There's these little frays that are going on, and everything is energy, guys. Everything is energy. We don't exist. It's energy that exists. When you get down to the brass tacks of everything, down to the quantum level of everything.
We are a consciousness which lives in a biological body that is essentially made up of atomic energy.
Which is all coming out of the consciousness of God, essentially, is what it comes down to. Now, what we're seeing, though, with these financial changes that are going on, the physical changes that are going on, so on and so forth, the Mandela Effect changes that are going on, we are just sensing the energy, and we as these biological beings are responding to it in unconscious ways. So when you see financial collapses going on or these financial problems going on, this is just a side effect of the negative energy that we're being subsumed with at this point in time.
But let's jump to the physical.
Hold on, doctor. Now, here's the thing. If we're being affected by negative energy, what do we have to do? Become positive energy. Lift ourselves up. Don't get all depressed about what's going on. Oh, there's weeds in my garden. I don't know what to do. Pull the damn weeds out and get on with life.
Yep.
Now's the time that we need to start becoming creative. We need to start creating our future. And that's
go, Coach. Go, Coach.
That's one of the things. Hey, if you're going to listen to somebody, listen to someone who takes their own advice. We just got back from Maine. We had to go up and survey the property, put a road in. The driveway is classified as a road, but we decided, okay, look, it's going to cost us another few $1,000s to cross the stream, and we don't have that much money. So let's. The driveway is 900 feet. 1,000 feet classifies it as a road. We're not going to go across the stream, at least not this year. But the thing is, we're doing this on a wing and a prayer. There isn't any bankroll to go do this. It's like, okay, it's going to be a lot of labor. And thank goodness we've got enough natural resources to actually do something with. But the problem is that we're facing a clock, and that clock is called winter. So, but we're doing this to not run away, but to start to create a positive future. I looked at everything that's up there and I said, my goodness, I know I've got a 5-year plan. I know what I'm going to be doing for the next 5 years.
The thing about humans that's amazing is that as opposed to other animals, we have the ability to see into the future, and we can conform ourselves to line up with whatever future we want to create. So we can say, I'm going to live in this place. Now, you may not have a clue how you're going to get there from this point in time, but you say, I want to live in this place. I'm going to have this car. I'm going to do this thing. And what do you do to get it there? Well, you visualize what it is, but then you put a small bit of energy to get the law of thermodynamics and the law of Newton's laws in motion. Things in motion tend to stay in motion. Things at rest tend to stay at rest. If you are just visualizing things and saying, okay, this is what I want, but you're not doing anything to put forth any kind of energy to get things moving, then you're going to remain in place. You're going to be stuck in the place in the zone that you're in right now. But you can create your reality.
As the scripture says, faith without works is dead.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So you put forth just a small bit of effort to create the reality that you want to conform to. Literally, people, this is the quantum physics of reality that we're talking about here. You can literally create your own reality because we can envision our future and make it happen. We're the only ones that can do so.
Yeah, the rest, and that's one of the things that separates us. It's what makes us children of the Creator. Yeah. We have that creative ability to create our own futures. Now, for approximately the 55% of Americans who think that the government will take care of them in times of an emergency, those people are not creating their futures. Those people are the ones that turn around and open up the scriptures. Oh yeah, you'll burn in hell. You don't read the Bible, and it says, look, the wolf is gonna lay with the lamb. Well, guess what? Your reality, if you believe that reality, go put your sheep out with the wolves and see what happens.
Whatever reality you believe exists is the one that exists. That's really what it comes down to.
It's interesting in exploring near-death experiences. Seeing as I've had one myself, mine is different than everybody else's. Nope, there's no two alike. There are some that are similar, but there's no two alike. And what you find is that there's one trend. Everyone who has a near-death experience, their near-death experience is connected to their living reality. In other words, if they believe that there's one experience of somebody going to hell, he was a really bad person and he didn't believe in God, and he in his near-death experience, he wound up in a fiery hot place. Now, I'm not going to say a fiery hot place is there, but that's what he experienced in his near-death experience. Others have been greeted by family; they've been welcomed. Everybody's got a different experience. However, let's not have any near-death experiences. Let's experience life. We can create it. We're as individual as snowflakes. We can create the future that we want. And so lead by example. Yes, we're going to lead by example. We're going to document this, put it on YouTube, and help others to achieve the same thing. All you have to do is put forth the effort.
Well, you got to write your memoir. You get Peter. I've started my memoir, guys. I probably should make that announcement to the world. I started my memoir, and what I've done is I've started this memoir about a dozen different times over the last 20 years. Okay, so here I am. I've got 14 different files, and each one's got a new beginning to the memoir. So that's how I had to start this process. Is that nuts? Just because I'm paranoid doesn't mean that they don't believe me. Okay.
Well,
hey guys, just to let you know, we are running down on time because I do need to get ready for my show here pretty soon. So just letting you know.
We certainly.
Well, let's do an early wrap then, Peter, because we've had a fair amount of time to express ourselves. I just want to leave everybody with one quick thought, and that is, we started to talk about the coming cataclysms. Let's watch this coming hurricane season very, very, very carefully, because it took aim at the mid-Atlantic states. which means it could be a Caribbean-born series of storms, which is not necessarily good for the United States, or for that matter, the Bahamas or any of the islands, much less Mexico. That's what we got to keep an eye on. Number two, the earthquake thing is still ringing off the charts. So are the earthquakes, so goes the volcanoes. I only want to leave everyone with the thought, who's responsible for you and your family? You're responsible for you first. If you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anybody else, which includes the wife, the kids, the dog, the cat, the goldfish, and the parakeets. And do you have enough food for all of these creatures? Do you have enough water, or a way to secure water, at least a quart a day per person, a minimum? So that would be 3-4 gallons for the average family a day. Just a few things to leave you with. We all had a great Memorial Day. I know I did. And I just want everybody to know that a lot of people came up to me that know me and, said, thank you for your service. That was cool. I really like that. Everyone should understand that they need to serve the country in some way, in some form, and leave it better than when they first accessed it. So that's what I try to do, and I think that's the purpose of our show. I'm going to sign off, Peter, wishing everybody a great weekend coming up, and let's just keep the faith, because one never knows when the final countdown rings its bell. Good night, everybody.
Good night, Doctor. Ira, certainly thank you for being our guest and engineering the show for us. That is a great help.
My pleasure.
I know I have to absorb this responsibility, and we now have the ability to do that. So next show, folks, Ira may not be with us, but it's not because he doesn't love us. And we will have him on from time to time because he's such a wealth of information on this. So I do want to thank you for being with us, Ira. Doctor, always, I want to thank you for being with us. It wouldn't be the final countdown with you. Folks,
my pleasure.
I want to thank all of you most of all, because if you weren't our listeners, we wouldn't be here. And I do ask for your support. We are listener supported, and we do our best to bring you good, truthful, honest intelligence so you too can create your futures, so you too can have a fantastic life, so you too can be part of the human family which is coming to planet Earth. And with that, I'm going to say love and blessings to all. Read Letters to Earth. Support us, keep us on the air, and support the Homestead Project. Love and blessings. Good night.
Bye-bye, everybody.